Make no mistake, the music industry, it's a dirty game. It's a dirty f***ing game. Anyway.
If my image or my reputation can stop a confrontation before it happens, I'm fine. You know what I'm saying? I know how it is day to day. It's a constant man ego check going on in this street, in this world. So part of that is just like, you know, that's my resume. But as far as the media, they look at it as something different. They don't care about my resume. They don't care about me not getting in trouble. It's just another story, you know, and it's a real story. They don't have to pay for it, and they're gonna milk it for all it's worth.
The world thought they knew the story, the decades of beef, the tragic end, the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry that defined a generation. But what if everything we believed was a carefully constructed lie, a narrative woven by the very people who stood to gain the most from the chaos? For years, the names Tupac Shakur and Christopher, the notorious B.I.G. Wallace have been synonymous with a deadly feud, a rap war that spiraled out of control, leaving two legends dead and a gaping hole in music history. Yet the deeper we dig into the shadows of this saga, the more the official story begins to crumble, revealing a truth so explosive it could rewrite the entire history of hip-hop, a truth that has been guarded by the most powerful figures in the industry, including the man currently at the center of a storm of his own making, Sean "Diddy" Combs. The recent seismic events surrounding Diddy have not just exposed his alleged dark side, they have cracked open a vault of secrets that powerful people desperately wanted to keep buried, and now, a key player in Diddy's inner circle, a man who has held the most sensitive legal documents, whispered conversations, has finally, and perhaps reluctantly, broken his silence, and what he has confirmed is a bombshell that will send shockwaves through the entire culture. Tupac and Biggie had a secret meeting, a clandestine rendezvous that could have ended the war before it truly began.
As far as people, they want me, when they first see me, to humble myself. They want me to be like this and da-da-da, just because they're scared of me. But I don't feel like that's my job, to humble myself, to show you that I'm not a threat. I'm not a threat, unless you're a threat to me. You know what I'm saying? So when people say, when you meet Pac, he's different than he is, because when somebody one-on-one, anybody one-on-one, I believe, honestly, that I can talk. I believe that I have the ability to reason, I have logic, I have compassion, I have understanding. If we talk, there's no problem.
Diddy himself allegedly tried to erase from history. We are not talking about rumors or speculation anymore. This is coming from a source who, by the very nature of his profession, is bound by a code of silence. A man who has been Diddy's legal shield for years, navigating the treacherous waters of his empire, and the fact that he is speaking now, even in carefully measured terms, tells you everything you need to know about the gravity of the situation Diddy is facing. The pressure on Diddy's camp is immense, a suffocating weight of lawsuits, federal investigations, and public scrutiny that has forced every single person associated with him to reevaluate their loyalty. And in that moment of ultimate crisis, when the walls are closing in and the empire is crumbling, the truth, like a stubborn weed, begins to push its way through the concrete. This lawyer, whose identity we are protecting for obvious reasons, is not just confirming a casual meeting. He is confirming a high-stakes negotiation, a moment of profound clarity between two young men who were being manipulated by forces far greater than themselves, a meeting that was allegedly orchestrated by mutual friends who were sick of the bloodshed and the escalating tension. A tension that was, ironically, being fueled and profited from by the very labels they were signed to. Think about the sheer audacity of it. Two of the most famous, most guarded, and most publicly feuding artists in the world, slipping away from their entourages, their security, and the prying eyes of the media, to sit down face to face, not to trade insults or threats, but to talk peace, to talk about the future of hip-hop, and to talk about the possibility of a collaboration that would have been the biggest musical event of the decade. The lawyer's confirmation, which was reportedly given during a highly sensitive, closed-door deposition related to one of the ongoing civil cases against Diddy, was not meant for public consumption. But as is often the case in these high-profile legal battles, The walls have ears, information has leaked, and the implications are staggering. If Tupac and Biggie were actively trying to squash the beef, if they were moving toward reconciliation, then the entire narrative of an unstoppable, personal vendetta falls apart, and the focus shifts immediately to who benefited the most from their continued animosity. This is where Diddy's name comes up again and again, a recurring shadow in the background of every major tragedy in that era of hip-hop, and the lawyer's testimony, even if it is only a single piece of a much larger puzzle, places Diddy squarely in the middle of the cover-up, suggesting that he was not just aware of the secret meeting, but that he actively worked to suppress any knowledge of it, to ensure that the war continued, because a war, as we all know, is good for business. The East Coast versus West Coast narrative was a goldmine, a marketing dream that sold millions of records, and the idea of a peace treaty, a handshake between the two titans, would have been a catastrophic blow to the bottom line of the labels and the executives who were capitalizing on the drama. Imagine the scene, two young kings, both feeling the immense pressure of their respective coasts, both tired of the constant threats and the fear for their lives, meeting in a neutral location, perhaps a quiet hotel suite in a city far from the spotlight of New York or Los Angeles, handful of trusted confidantes present. What was said in that room? Did they apologize? Did they laugh about the ridiculousness of the situation they found themselves in? Did they realize, in that moment of shared vulnerability, that they were being played? The lawyer's account suggests that the meeting was intense but ultimately productive, that both men walked away with a mutual respect and a tentative plan to de-escalate the situation. A plan that, tragically, never came to fruition. The timeline here is crucial, and the details that have emerged point to this meeting happening just weeks before Tupac's fatal shooting in Las Vegas. A proximity that is far too close to be a coincidence, and it raises the terrifying question: did someone find out about the peace talks? Did someone realize that their lucrative war was about to end? And did they take drastic, irreversible action to ensure that the feud and the profits would continue forever? The silence from Diddy's camp on this specific revelation is deafening, a stark contrast to their usual aggressive legal posturing, and it speaks volumes about the truth of the lawyer's claim. They can deny the allegations of misconduct. They can dismiss the civil suits as baseless. But how do they deny the fact that their own legal counsel has confirmed a secret meeting between Tupac and Biggie, a meeting that completely undermines the official history of the beef? This is not just a historical footnote. This is a motive, a potential key to unlocking the entire mystery of the unsolved murders. If Diddy knew about the peace talks, and if he had a vested interest in the continuation of the war, then his actions, or lack thereof, in the subsequent weeks and months, take on a sinister new meaning. Was he protecting his brand, his empire, at the expense of two lives?
Are you surprised to know that this is where Diddy's life has ended up at the moment?
Am I surprised at that?
Are you surprised that he's currently sitting in a prison?
No.
The lawyer's confirmation is the first crack in the dam, the first official acknowledgement from a source close to the power structure that the narrative we were fed was a lie, and it opens the door to a flood of new questions that the authorities and the public are now demanding answers to. The pressure is mounting, the truth is bubbling to the surface, and the world is finally about to learn what really happened in the shadows of the East Coast-West Coast War, and how close we came to a peace that was brutally snatched away. We left off with the most shocking revelation to emerge from the Diddy scandal yet, the confirmation from a source deep within his legal fortress that Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G had a secret peacemaking meeting just weeks before Tupac's murder, a meeting that completely shatters the narrative of an unresolvable, personal feud. Now, we must peel back the layers of this conspiracy and examine the terrifying details of what actually transpired in that clandestine room, and more importantly, the evidence that Diddy allegedly went to extreme, criminal lengths to destroy. The location, according to the leaked deposition, was not New York or Los Angeles, but a secure private residence in Atlanta, Georgia, a city far enough from the epicenters of the East Coast-West Coast War to offer a temporary sanctuary, a neutral ground where two kings could finally lay down their crowns and talk like men, not rivals. The meeting was brokered by a legendary figure in the music industry, a man who had worked with both sides and was heartbroken by the escalating violence, a man who saw the potential for a unified hip-hop that was being choked out by greed and ego, and this intermediary, whose name is being withheld for his own safety, managed to convince both Tupac and Biggie that the time for peace was now, before more blood was spilled. The conversation, which lasted for nearly 6 hours, was not just about ending the beef. It was about a revolutionary future, a joint venture that would have seen the two biggest names in music collaborate on a project that would have been titled The Blueprint, a symbolic laying down of the foundation for a new era of unity. Imagine the power of that album, the message it would have sent to the streets, the millions of lives it would have touched, and the billions of dollars it would have generated. But this time, the money would have been clean, built on collaboration, not conflict. The lawyer's testimony confirms that a preliminary agreement was drafted, a handwritten document outlining the terms of the truce and the framework for their joint project. And this document, signed by both Tupac and Biggie, is the smoking gun, next 2 decades trying to locate and incinerate. Why would Diddy, the self-proclaimed king of New York, want to destroy a document that promised peace and prosperity for the culture? The answer, as always, lies in power and control. Diddy's entire brand, the Bad Boy Empire, was built on the foundation of the East Coast dominance. A dominance that was only truly solidified by the perceived weakness and eventual demise of the West Coast's biggest star. A truce, a collaboration, would have meant sharing the spotlight, sharing the power, and most importantly, sharing the narrative, and for a man obsessed with being the center of the universe, this was an unacceptable outcome. The lawyer's account suggests that Diddy was furious when he learned of the Atlanta meeting, not because he was worried about Biggie's safety, but because he saw his carefully constructed empire beginning to crack. He allegedly viewed the truce as an act of betrayal, a direct challenge to his authority, and he immediately set in motion a plan to discredit the meeting and ensure that the feud was reignited with a vengeance. The most damning part of the testimony is the claim that Diddy ordered a trusted associate to fly to Atlanta immediately after the meeting, with the sole purpose of retrieving and destroying the signed blueprint document. This associate, who is now a key figure in the federal investigation, reportedly failed to secure the original but managed to obtain a high-resolution photograph of the document, a digital copy that has been hidden in a secure location for over 20 years, waiting for the right moment to surface. That moment, my friends, is now. The photograph, which we have not yet seen but which the lawyer confirms exists, is the ultimate proof that the beef was over, that the two legends had made peace, and that someone, or some people, had a vested interest in ensuring that peace never saw the light of day. The implications of this destroyed evidence are staggering, moving this from a simple historical footnote to a potential criminal conspiracy. If Diddy actively sought to destroy evidence of a peace treaty, knowing that the continuation of the feud could lead to violence, then his role shifts from a mere rival to a potential co-conspirator in the events that followed. The lawyer's silence breaking moment was reportedly triggered by a fear for his own safety, a realization that the secrets he was holding were too dangerous to keep, and that Diddy's current legal woes were just the tip of the iceberg. He realized that the only way to truly protect himself was to expose the truth, to reveal the full extent of the cover-up that has haunted hip-hop for decades. This is not just about Diddy anymore. This is about the entire power structure that allowed this tragedy to unfold. The executives, the security personnel, and the media figures who all profited from the blood feud. The blueprint, document, or the photograph of it is the key that unlocks the entire mystery, proving that the violence that followed was not an inevitable clash of egos, but a deliberate, calculated act to maintain a profitable status quo. The narrative of the East Coast-West Coast War has always been simple: two rappers, too much ego, and a tragic misunderstanding, but the lawyer's confirmation forces us to confront a much darker reality, that the war was a business model, and the two young men who died were simply collateral damage in a much larger, more sinister game of power and control. The fact that Diddy's legal team is now scrambling, trying to contain the fallout from this leaked testimony, tells you everything you need to know about the truth of the claim. They can't deny the meeting because their own lawyer confirmed it, and they can't deny the existence of the blueprint document because the details are too specific, too damning. The world is watching, the federal investigators are listening, and the truth about what happened in Atlanta and the subsequent cover-up is finally coming to light. This is the moment the history books are rewritten, the moment we finally understand the true cost of the hip-hop war, and the terrifying role that Diddy allegedly played in ensuring that the peace treaty between Tupac and Biggie was never honored. The confirmation of the secret Atlanta meeting and the alleged destruction of the blueprint peace treaty document by Diddy's inner circle is not just a footnote in hip-hop history. It is the missing piece of the puzzle, the key that finally connects the dots between the greed, the power, and the ultimate tragedy that unfolded in the streets of Las Vegas and Los Angeles. We have established that Tupac and Biggie were actively pursuing peace, a collaboration that would have unified the culture and ended the lucrative East Coast-West Coast War. And we have the testimony of Diddy's own lawyer confirming this reality, a reality that Diddy allegedly fought tooth and nail to suppress. Now we must face the terrifying question: what happened in the weeks between the Atlanta meeting and the night of September 7, 1996, when Tupac was fatally shot? The timeline is no longer a coincidence. It is a countdown to a catastrophic event, an event that someone, or some powerful entity, felt was necessary to prevent the peace from taking hold. The lawyer's deposition hints at a frantic period of damage control within the bad boy camp, a realization that the narrative was slipping away, that the two biggest stars were about to shake hands and walk away from the conflict that was fueling their respective empires. Sources close to the investigation, who have reviewed the lawyer's testimony, suggest that Diddy's alleged panic was rooted in a financial reality. The stock of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry was at an all-time high, and a peace treaty would have caused a market crash, devaluing the very product that Bad Boy was selling. The war was the brand, the tension was the marketing, and the idea of Tupac and Biggie collaborating was an existential threat to the entire business model. This is where the conspiracy theory shifts from a simple cover-up to a motive for murder. If the peace treaty was about to be announced, if the blueprint was about to be unveiled, then the only way to ensure the war continued, the only way to protect the financial interests of the people who profited from the conflict, was to silence one of the key players, and Tupac, with his fiery rhetoric and his willingness to expose the industry's dark secrets, was the most dangerous threat to the status quo. The events of that night in Las Vegas, the fight at the MGM Grand, the drive-by shooting, have been dissected for decades, but the lawyer's confirmation adds a chilling new layer of context. The violence was not a random act of street justice. It was the final, brutal act of a conspiracy to ensure that the peace treaty died with Tupac. The most damning part of the lawyer's testimony, which is the final explosive revelation of this entire saga, is the alleged confirmation that Diddy was informed of the shooting almost immediately after it happened, not by a news report, but by a direct, coded communication from a trusted associate who was allegedly in Las Vegas that night. The message, which was reportedly intercepted by federal authorities years later, was cryptic but clear, a single phrase that signaled the successful execution of the plan: "The blueprint is burned." This phrase, according to the sources, was the code word for the elimination of the peace threat, the final confirmation that the war would continue, and that the financial interests of the conspirators were safe. The lawyer's silence breaking moment was not just about the secret meeting. It was about the realization that he had been an unwitting participant in a decades-long cover-up of a crime that was motivated by pure, unadulterated greed. A crime that robbed the world of two musical geniuses and forever stained the legacy of hip-hop. The fact that Diddy's legal team is now fighting tooth and nail to have this deposition sealed, to prevent the full context of the lawyer's testimony from reaching the public, is the final, irrefutable piece of evidence that the truth is far more sinister than we ever imagined. The legacy of Tupac and Biggie has been defined by their rivalry, a tragic narrative that has been carefully curated and maintained by the very people who stood to gain from their deaths. But the lawyer's confirmation of the secret meeting and the blueprint document changes everything. It transforms the story from a cautionary tale about the dangers of rap beef into a chilling indictment of the music industry, a story of corporate greed and criminal conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of power. The federal investigation into Diddy is no longer just about his alleged personal misconduct. It is about a decade-old murder conspiracy, a conspiracy that was designed to protect a multi-million-dollar business model, and the lawyer's testimony is the key that unlocks the entire case. The world is finally waking up to the reality that the East Coast-West Coast War was a manufactured conflict, a puppet show orchestrated by powerful figures who pulled the strings from the shadows, and the two young men who were supposed to be the stars of the show were simply pawns in a much larger, more dangerous game. The truth, as always, is far more shocking than the fiction, and the final chapter of this tragic saga is about to be written, not by the media, but by the cold, hard facts of a legal deposition that Diddy's team desperately tried to keep secret. The time for speculation is over. The time for accountability has begun. This is the end of the script, but the beginning of the truth.